This is Sharon Raji Maynard, and this is my new podcast, Gazelles and the Phoenix. So why gazelles and the phoenix? Well, there's an old quote that says, I'm going to stop focusing on the dinosaurs, just let them die. Instead, I'm going to focus on the gazelles. Gazelles are those individual projects and organizations and individuals that are rising up out of the ashes, even before the dinosaurs are gone. So I have had the wonderful experience of meeting a lot of gazelles, being in company of those who are holding space as the phoenix rise from the ashes. So this podcast will be episodes to share with you those individuals, those groups, those ideas. Some of them will come from monthly meetings that are sponsored by the patrons of my other podcast, A Mystic's View. If you're interested in becoming part of that supportive community, go over to patreon.com/A Mystic's View. And there you can get details. We're a growing community. We're committed to a collaborative mindset, and it's a joyful experience. So thank you for those patrons that enable me to do this podcast. And I'm excited to share with you gazelles that are rising up like phoenixes from the ashes. This first episode of Gazelles and the Phoenix is a recording of a panel of presenters in May 2019. I called them together in order to show our community at Deep Roots, which is the Patreon community for A Mystic's View, an example of what an integrated approach to making changes in your life would look like. It's not all work out on the streets marching. It's not all petitions. It's not all running for office. There are many ways that we each can do our part to weave a new world. So I hope you enjoy these panelists. We loved having them, and they loved being with us. So here we are. I'm really thrilled to be hosting this for all of you. Just a bit of logistics. All of the panelists will be unmuted. All of the participants will be muted. So I'm really thrilled to host this event. This event is sponsored by my Patreon community called Deep Roots, and it's a group of individuals who, through the Patreon platform, say, we like what you're doing, and we're going to contribute to you at whatever level for however long. But just that kind of support is so, to me, like what we had intended to do with one another when we lived in villages and communities. We did that with one another. We all supported one another as we, again, rooted. So I want to, before we start, I'm just going to do a shout out to those who are patrons on my platform, because they're the ones who have inspired me and enabled me to do this particular event. So, Andrea, Audrey, Carol, Cinda, Deborah, Janet, Emma, Janelle, Jennifer, Lynn, Cheyenne, and Susan. Thank you, my sisters. And the more we do this with one another, the more we grow together. So thank you for that very much. Every event I host, like most of you, I've already set space. I've already called in guides and helpers and guardians, etc. I want you to know that we did the same for this. So the qualities of this space are that of what is the good for all? How can we benefit from one another? How can we be generous and heart connected with one another? How can we listen deeply? And how can we listen to our own internal movement in a way that will benefit not only you, this group, and beyond? Welcome to this sacred space. We will first hear from our panelists, and they will each speak for up to about 8 minutes. So they're not going to give you the whole lowdown of what they do. This is a snippet, like a taste. And I'm going to have them go in this order. And if you panelists, if you forget, I'll just call. So we have Suzanne Lewis, who's going to speak to the call for grandmothers to gather. And then we're going to have Lori Marshall, who will speak to peace building through art, supporters inspired by nature. Friends. And then Gemma Benton will speak on reclaiming wisdom with our ancestors. And then Delia Yeager will speak on how integral self-healing is healing the world. Part of my intention here was to have people who are doing different kinds of things. You'll see that they're not all doing the same thing. And I really wanted it to be that way. In my healing practice, I teach my students and my clients to think about an integrated protocol, because we are not just physical beings, and we all know that. We have a mental aspect, we have an emotional aspect, and we have a spiritual aspect of ourselves, and then more. So if we work in a healing way with just the physical, which might be diet, massage, etc., it'll affect the entire wave energy of ourselves. But if we then add some mental constructs that are helpful, and some emotional constructs that are helpful, and some spiritual processes that are helpful, all together they help that energy wave that we are, that's out of balance or not well, to align itself more quickly. And the same thing can occur when we want to make changes in our country, for example, or in our school board. So those of us who might be on the street marching with placards doing the physical, that's what we see. But any others that are working to do a mental educate or to address some of the emotional undercurrents or even set new boundaries, you see, are all part of the value that happens when we start to integrate all of our different ways of being and respect and honor them in that way. So that's the model, and we go from there to Suzanne. You're on, and welcome, Suzanne. So glad that you're here with us.
Thank you. Around a month ago, my dear friend, Brooke Medicine Eagle, came to Boise, Idaho, and we facilitated an event called Wild Women of the West, Empowerment and Healing. Brooke Medicine Eagle is one of my dear long-term friends and healers. She was turning 76 years old, and we facilitated this 3-day event with ages of 18 years old to 84 years old. After the 3-day event, Brooke put a call out that it is the time for the grandmothers to show up, to put their winged arms out and embrace the different generations. I am one who is a grandmother, have been called a grandmother since I was 35 years old, and have long time memories and dreams of the grandmothers coming to me. And one of the things I've heard is that if the grandmothers will show up, they'll speak and put a call out to name ways in which they are rainbow bridging with all the generations. And so on Facebook, I put an innocent call out to see if there's others that know that it's the time of the rainbow warriors, that when the grandparents and the elders stand beside the young, so that we can weave into this golden age. And Sharon was one of the people I reached out to. I'm a networker, and I reached out to grandmothers who circle the world, 13 Indigenous grandmothers. I have 2 pages of lists of women that are actively knowing, responding to an innate call that it's the time that we must show up. Dalai Lama has stated that it's if Western women will come out from under the shadow of the great mountain, the earth will be saved. Hopi grandmother Sasa says that if the grandmothers will show up and speak, Earth will be healed. And in this networking, of which Sharon responded, why I'm here today, I was stunned. Over 2,500 people clicked on my post. And what I learned is that deep in our high feminine wisdom, we know about the Grandmother's Council. And it's in our bones. It's our ancestors' prayers that are living through us. And we are now called to do the prayers for the sake of our future generations. Maybe that's a good place to stop, because my question is, how do we network? I am stunned. In the 13 indigenous grandmothers came together from all countries of the world. They had a dream, they had a vision, they had an impulse, they had a knowing, and then they came together at the United Nations. Well, I think that same impulse is happening right now, that we grandmothers must show up and stand up. And part of that is claiming who we are. The younger people don't know. And so we have to be able to say, this is what it looks like to be a powerful woman of wisdom, ensuring future generations, all the people, can be beautiful and kind.
Thank you, Suzanne. I wanted to say, we don't know how to do it, but we can say, it is done. And I stand with you, touched with it is done. These women here on this call, they are not new to being ready to help the world, but I think we're being called to something greater. So
I agree.
Thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne Lewis, the first panelist to speak on Grandmothers Gathering. Listen to our next 4 presenters, and you'll have a complete understanding of the power of this particular panel. Blessings.